One thing that a lot of language learners struggle with is fluency. So, fluency is the most important part of speaking. The reason for that is because if you make some mistakes, such as pronunciation mistakes, grammar mistakes, vocabulary mistakes, you forget to put in an article, you forget to use a gerund, for example. Fluency, if it's high, will not make that obvious. So if you make a mistake and you're very fluent, your fluency will override the mistake. People won't notice it. The most important part is fluency because it helps clarity. It also helps you to express the context, what you're trying to say, so the message that you're trying to get across. That's why fluency is so important. So if you are speaking at a good flow and you're making lots of mistakes, let's say, it won't really matter that much because it's not distracting. So in the IELTS speaking test, if you are making a lot of mistakes but you're not very fluent, then that's going to make it obvious, and that will be what will bring your score down. Because if you want to get a band 7 but you've got lots of good vocabulary and you're answering the questions very well and sentences are very good, but let's say you're making lots of grammar mistakes, and then let's say your fluency is very, very broken, it's going to make the grammar mistakes a lot more obvious. And the problem with that is that can make it distracting, and that will make the examiner bring your score down for grammar, and that can really affect the score. So then, as well as that, you might become really nervous, you might get panicky, you might get a bit shaky, and that then also affects other things. This is why fluency is very important. So this is something that we're really going to have to work on, and I'm going to really help you with this. The things that I'm going to teach you here are things that you're going to have to start doing from now. So when you're speaking English, you're going to have to start doing these things, and they're really effective. And if you think about this in your language, I promise you'll definitely be doing this in your language without realizing it. I know that's definitely true with Spanish, because I've noticed Spanish speakers doing this. I'm not so sure about a lot of other languages, but definitely in Spanish, and I think so actually in Korean and Japanese too, from what I can remember. So, ways to improve fluency. First is something we call elongation. Elongation is when you stretch part of the word. Usually it's a vowel, so it's like A, E, I, O, U. Those parts of the word, when they are stretched, give you time to think about the next word or the next group of words. So that's something that you need to do, but you need to replace and with elongation. So I look at it this way. I say to students, take the or the and put it into the word. So let's say you're saying, what do you do in your free time? You say, I like going to the gym, but we're not going to say like. We're going to say, I'm really crazy about. So it's my favorite thing to do is go to the gym. So I'm really crazy about going to the gym. Very fluent, okay? But if there is, I'm really crazy about going to the gym. So, as you can notice, that it's very difficult to follow what the person is saying when their fluency is that broken. And then when there are grammar mistakes thrown into that, it makes it even more difficult to understand what they're saying. Even a simple sentence like that. Because if the person has broken fluency, it's hard to focus on what exactly they're saying, because you have to focus on everything. I'm a really big fan of going to the gym. And it's like you have to think about afterwards, what were they saying exactly? Okay, I see now, because you have to think about, I'm a really big fan of going to the gym. So let's take the elongation. So what you can do is, let's take the and put it into the phrase. So we've got, I'm really crazy about. So instead of saying, I'm really crazy, you'd say, I'm really crazy about going to the gym. So that's what we do. We stretch parts of the word. The words that are easiest to stretch, that's usually the vowels. I'm really crazy. Now I know it's crazy, C-R-A-Z-Y, but the Y is pronounced like an E-E. Let's try another one. So you could say, if the examiner, or let's say someone asks you about your best friend. So if we do it with broken fluency. Well, my best friend, I met her when I was in kindergarten. So see how difficult it is to follow that. So imagine someone who is speaking like that all the time. It's kind of difficult to follow in terms of having to process all the information, because you have to concentrate and remember everything they're saying. But if it's more fluent, you won't have to do that. So what you do then is you could say, my best friend, that way. So you could say, my best friend who, blah, 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 like that. So you could say, my particular best friend, I have two best friends. One is from Korea, one is from Mexico. So I met my Mexican best friend through an online course, would you believe? So I could say, well, my best friend is from Mexico and I met him on an online course that I was teaching. So let's break up that fluency. My best friend is from Mexico, right? So my best friend is from Mexico and I met him when I was teaching an online course. Now, that may sound weird, but that's what you have to do to improve your fluency. I promise you, if you do that, people will be able to understand you more clearly. Absolutely more clearly. And in the IELTS test, the CELPIP test, any test you take, that will really help your score for fluency go up. Because in the IELTS test, for sure, you are getting marked on fluency. And that's one thing that will really help. It's very, very effective. It's really effective. I had a student a few years ago when I first met her. She was speaking like this. So then what happened was I told her about this and then she started doing it and she said it sounded and felt weird at first, but she got used to it and then it became a normal thing. So then she was doing it all the time without even thinking about it and she just became way more fluent. Then she took the first certificate English test and got a really high score in speaking. And she said she was very, very happy with her fluency. So that's one thing that you can do for improving fluency. One other thing that we can do for improving fluency is making sure, see, I was elongating there, is making sure, because I'm trying to think of what to say next, but most people would say is making sure, so don't do that. Now start doing is making sure, but now I have to remember what I was going to say. But the next thing that we're going to do to improve fluency is to make sure that you think in groups of words. So this is one of the reasons why people say a lot, is because they're thinking of one word at a time. That's not what we do in English. That's not what you probably do in your language. The best thing to do is to speak in groups of words. It's the same with practicing reading, which I'll be doing in a different course. But speaking at one word at a time is not very effective. It's actually not very good for speaking in general. So what you do is you think in groups of words. So instead of saying, in my free time, I like going to the gym. So see, difficult to follow that. But if you think in groups of words, because there you're thinking in my free, you're thinking of the word free, and then you say time. So you're thinking of individual words. That's not how we speak. So to improve your fluency, you should think in groups of words. So, in my free time, I'm really into going to the gym. See? So instead of saying in my free time, I'm thinking about in my free time. I'm really into going to the gym. So I'm thinking in three chunks of the sentence rather than just thinking of in my, and then you're thinking of one word, free. And then you start going time, and then you have to think about what to say next. So this is where elongation comes in while thinking about groups of words. So in my free time, I'm a big fan of going to the gym. Compare that to in my free time. So yeah, so do it that way. That's a lot more effective for fluency. And if you do just those two things I've told you about today, your fluency will improve so fast. and then you'll get a high score for your fluency in the IELTS test. And fluency helps with everything else. As I've said, if you make mistakes, good fluency helps to not recognize them very much or not be very aware of them. Because look, in my free time, I like go at gym. So see, if you said in my free time I like go gym. Now, obviously I'm very aware of the mistakes that are in that sentence, but they're not as obvious because you're not concentrating on them, because there's fluency in there that's very, very good. So focus on your elongation and focus on groups of words, and I promise your fluency will improve very, very well. So let's go on to the next topic. Have a look at the next video and you'll see what we're doing next.